take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron, and we have 2 mock drafts, perfect A-plus mock drafts that we're going to be going through today. What I wanted to set out to do was give you, the people, 2 consensus A-pluses across the board. So we're going to be going through and using the PFF mock draft simulator and showing what a perfect A-plus, 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 A-plus draft looks like, and also use the NFL mock draft databases, mock draft simulator, and also do a whole bunch of trade backs. You want to stay tuned for that one because that one is personally one of my favorites and something that I actually hope the Bears end up doing. But also, if you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe if you're out there on YouTube, and also rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast, because it is draft week, baby. It is draft week, and I can't wait. Also, the camera's going to be updated. It still has not come in yet, so I'm still using the old Johnny PayPal camera, but we will be upgrading that soon. So thank you for staying tuned with that. But let's get this show on the road, and let's talk about putting together this perfect A-plus draft. I thought that this would be kind of a fun little activity for us to go through together. So PFFs, first off, very hard to get in all A-pluses for all 4 picks. I had to do at least like 40 mock drafts, and also I had to change some of the settings. But this is a realistic A-plus draft that the Bears could achieve according to PFF, and actually not just PFF, but also out there as a consensus piece as well. So without further ado, let's get this A-plus perfect mock draft going and getting started with the number 1 pick overall. Who would be the A-plus pick? You already guessed it. Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams, no surprise there. The number 1 quarterback, number one prospect out there. We've talked about him ad nauseum. He also just had this recent interview with, I forgot what show it was on, but for those that have seen it, I love his confidence. I know some people are going to say it's arrogance. Like I've said before, I want the rock star quarterback. I want something different than Justin Fields and Mitch Trubisky and Rex Grossman and Kyle Orton. I want the showboat person, because if that gets us a winner and someone that wants to dominate and knows that he's good and always striving to be the best, give me that guy. He'll have a little bit of arrogance, but I don't care as long as he wins games for us. So Caleb Williams, the no-brainer, A-plus pick there. So now we're going to pick 9. And this could have been a couple other people. So I tried to see with the PFF mock draft simulator, where do we actually get an A-plus? And PFF is a very, very difficult grader when it comes to their A-pluses. If Joe Alt fell to 9, that was still an A. So who gave us an A-plus at the number 9 pick? Believe it or not, Rome Odunze, wide receiver out of Washington. And this also is just kind of credit for the value of the wide receiver position, but also how good Rome Odunze is. So 2 A-plus picks back to back. Rome Odunze, everybody talks about him. And I think what this ultimately gives the Bears is that top 3 wide receivers for the future. And I feel, too, the Bears might look to give an extension, like a 1-year extension to Keenan Allen to get his contract to kind of line up with DJ Moore. There was talks about it before, and it's kind of fizzled out because it sounds like Ryan Poles, like what he said, he's very methodical about his extensions. He wants to give it to the people that need it, a la Tevin Jenkins potentially. But still, I look at this wide receiver core. You would have your people outside. You could have Keenan Allen as the slot. Rome Odunze, it's just a very good pick. Even though I'm not the highest, like, Rome Odunze is really good. And he's a very phenomenal player. And that's why to me, and yet again, PFF grades both of those as A pluses. So this is where it gets crazy. The number 75 pick, there was a lot of people that were dropping to number 75, and they were still not giving it A plus. And Aurora would go down to 75, and that still wasn't considered A plus. There's someone who PFF is really high on, but the general consensus is not too high, and he's projected to to go at pick 75. And that is edge out of Utah, Jonah Ellis. So we have the Bears selecting him, and this is an A-plus selection according to PFF at that number 75 spot. Jonah Ellis out of Utah, 6'2", 246 junior. This guy is kind of like the Laiatu Latu light, where he's got just phenomenal pass rush moves, and that's where we've brought this up on the show. Is that something that the Bears want to see, or is that something that the Bears look at and go, you know what, we could probably coach that? Jonah Ellis, the reason why that he's so high up on PFF, he's very, very high, but he is the number 76 overall prospect. So this is someone who could be there. Another person was Idissa Isaac out of Penn State. But I feel like people that know football, like the top scouts are all kind of saying Isaac should be more of a second-round pick rather than third. But Ellis is one of these people that could drop. The thing I don't necessarily love about him reminds me a little bit of Nick Herbig, where he kind of had the shorter length. But overall, Jonah Ellis at 6'2" is short, but his arms were still 33 inches, which was a huge plus for me. And I have him at my edge 15. I'm actually probably going to move him up. I do like it because I like someone that does have some pass rush moves, and he is also just someone that has some very, very, very high motors and also some very good moves. So that's something that is great about him. But getting him at pick 75, that gives us an A+ so far. So this gives us to pick 122, which this was the bane of my existence. I literally was going to give up on this. I had to change the settings so that the randomness was up, because literally it was like if Ben Sinnott was there at 122, they would give you an A. Or if Hall Jr., the defensive tackle out of Ohio State, if he was there, it was still just an A. So the A+ was so difficult to come by when I was trying to do this, but I found someone who realistically would be available at 122 and someone who PFF did give an A+ grade to if we were to draft him. And that is Jalix Hunt out of Houston Christian. Now, we have talked very lightly about him on the Edge episode where we were talking about him. 6'4", but we did deep dive. 6'4", 252. He's my edge 20. He's the consensus edge 17, consensus 164. This is where he would go at that 122 spot. PFF a lot higher on him. 83.4 PFF grade, which is 51st. Reminds me a little bit of a Jamal Davis just from the athletic standpoint. But this guy, just if you're curious about why there's such a big range on this guy, it's because he's this typical small school prospect. And when you put on the tape, the explosion pops out. When he's playing, it doesn't feel like he has a pass rush plan. It just seems like he's like, you know what? I'm better than all of you. I'm faster than all of you. And I'm going to use my athleticism to my advantage and get past you. Now, last year, 41 tackles, 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 24 hurries, 18.9% pass rush win rate, and 7.8% run stop percentage. Solid. A former safety, and you can see that on tape, just incredibly athletic. The thing that I don't necessarily love about this pick is this is another person I project more as a stand-up edge rusher, not so much hand in the dirt. But yet again, he hasn't had access to an NFL weight room, NFL nutritionist. Does that add more weight to him? And with an actual NFL coach, does that help him just kind of get this repertoire of pass rush moves? This is a ball of clay. This is a perfect replacement of a Dominique Robinson. And you might have noticed 2 edge rushers. This is a very interesting concept because you could draft 2 edge rushers, and then now your edge rush spot you feel pretty good about with 2 developmental prospects that you have as backups. So it's an interesting way to kind of go about it, but both gave us A+. Like I said, we did not have a lot of options. The only other options that I did see that I wanted to call out, Malik Washington, wide receiver out of Virginia, one of my favorites, would have also been an A+. I had him in a different one, but I like the concept of 2 edges, and I wanted to discuss it with you guys just to kind of say, what did we think about this? This A+ haul, is this actually an A+ to us? Let me know. To me, if we stay at 4 and we walk away with Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze, I love that. Jonah Ellis, I think that's a solid pick at 75. And 122, Jalix Hunt, like I said, I'm lower on it. But if the Bears saw him and said, listen, we could take this explosive athlete and turn him into something, I'm all for it. I'm definitely all for it. And also get to the quarterback. So like I said, with this one, I didn't want to trade because PFF's mock draft simulator is freaking hard. Because also, PFF's mock draft simulator factors in positional value. So if you draft a safety, it's never going to be an A+. If you draft a center, it will never be an A+. And even offensive tackle, a lot of those. Karan Amagaji out of Yale, he's like their 50th prospect. And if you draft him at 75, A. No A+. So that was very difficult to put together, but ultimately we got it. We got our A+ draft. So now we're shifting over to the NFL mock draft database. And this to me is one of my favorites. This one was fun. And I wanted to have fun with it because this is a lot easier than PFF to get A+. They factor more so in your positions of need. So they really want you to really attack that. But on the flip side, what they do factor in too, if you draft a wide receiver, if you draft another wide receiver, no matter how good, they'll give you a B+ for that. So we do not duplicate any position groups out here because it would give us a B+. So let's go through this. A+ mock draft for the NFL mock draft database. Let's start with number 1. Who is that? You guessed it. Caleb Williams again. We don't have to recap this. Caleb Williams, best player in the draft, easy A+ for any mock draft simulation that you end up using. So at pick number 9, this is where it gets interesting. Like I said, with pick number 9, in this draft, we are going to do trades. And I thought I don't see a lot of people talking about New Orleans because the New Orleans Saints love to trade up and they need offensive line help. And the Bears would be the team to trade up with. And this was a little bit on the Bears' favor side. So it kind of favored the Bears a little bit. And also NFL mock draft database, I think, has a better trade engine than PFF. PFF, you can get away with murder on that thing. It can be 50-50, but it's like obviously in your team's favor. This, I feel, uses the actual draft counters, and I really like this. So ultimately, we trade our first number 9 and 75. And what we get, because New Orleans doesn't have a third, we get pick 14, pick 45, and they have a lot of late round draft capital. So we walk away with 150, 170, and 190. Like I said, this gives us it was like a little tick into the Bears' favor. But overall, this does seem like an even trade. The only thing that I think is unrealistic about this is the number of draft picks that we did get back. They would probably trade something in the future rather than a total of 5 picks for 2 picks. But anyways, it was easier for me to just do one giant trade like this so we could have more draft picks out there. So we have pick number 14. And what do we do with this? As you can imagine, like I said, this is about need. What is a big need for the Bears? Defensive end. And what do we walk away with? Jared Verse, edge rusher out of Florida State. And this is where I love this mock draft, to be honest with you. Jared Verse, defensive end out of Florida State, 6'4", 260. Y'all already know he's my edge 1. I really just like his power profile. I think, too, he is the perfect edge rusher for what the Bears want to do. If they want another Montez Sweat on the outside, that is that power guy, that is Jared Verse. Dallas Turner would give him speed, and I think Latu purely is the best edge rusher as long as he clears medically. But Jared Verse to me is just foundationally sound, a good player, 21.8% pass rush win rate, just consistently has always been a good player. So to me, Jared Verse, I like him. Might play a little stiff, but to me, he's great. He's just an absolute fighter. The Bears will love him. So now, let's go to pick 45, where there was a lot of good options available. Like, too many good options for me to choose from. So what did I decide to do? You know what? Let's do another trade. So what I ended up going with was let's trade with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This one was about even. This one was like smack dab in the middle even. We give up pick 45 and we get pick 57 and 92. Now we have 8 picks to our name. We're not trading, spoiler alert, we're not trading any of these others. We have 8 picks, so let's get this going. Yet again, we're going to keep on going for A pluses, and now we're at pick 57. Who could be available at pick 57 at a position of need? There's a lot of wide receivers, like Xavier Legette was one of them, but there was someone who fell just a little bit, and this could happen because it's a low-value position, quote-unquote, but the Bears definitely need someone who is this stable. I'm talking about none other than Zack Frasier, the center out of West Virginia. And if this happens, like I said, I love this. I love this A-plus stuff. You got Zack Frasier, so you feel good about your center position moving forward. Just an absolute bowling ball. Understands that center position. A true high football IQ guy that you can just, there's your starter for years to come, Zack Frasier. And to me, now you have some of the biggest holes on your team filled. You have an edge rusher in Jared Verse. You have your quarterback in Caleb Williams. You have your center at Zack Frasier. That allows Coleman Shelton to help Zack Frasier out. And then Ryan Bates can truly be a guard. And if they want him more so than a Nate Davis, now you feel a lot more comfortable about your interior. You feel good about kind of having these young tackles with Darnell Wright and Braxton Jones. It's a good feeling. It's a good vibe to have to have a good center that's the focal point of that team. 98.9% pass block efficiency, just has been a good player throughout his entire career at West Virginia. So now this is where it gets a little interesting to me, because this next player might not be a true A+ in my book, but he came up and he was available, and I knew he was going to give me an A+ at pick 92. Yet again, what positions do we need? One of them, wide receiver, or who was the top player available at that moment, defensive tackle. The Chicago Bears come away with Mason Smith, D tackle out of LSU. Now, some of you might have been like, oh, crap. And then the other half of you are going, oh, my God, this is the greatest pick of all time. Mason Smith is a highly polarizing player. Defensive tackle out of LSU, redshirted junior. This is what the Bears might also love. He's a 5-star recruit out of LSU, and this guy has the length. He's 6'5", 306, has incredibly long arms, but last year, 27 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 18 hurries, a 55.6 run grade according to PFF. That's why, to me, he reminds me of Trent Thompson. Who's Trent Thompson? Exactly. He was a former 5-star that went to Georgia, came out his junior year just like Mason Smith. He was a lot lighter, but it just reminds me of the same scenario. Mason Smith has been banged up. In 2022, he ended up tearing his ACL celebrating. So ultimately, it just feels like he had this knee injury 2 years ago, came back from it, didn't show the same pop, didn't show a lot of the same traits that you would like to see. And really, I don't see a lot in his bull rush. But this is a high ceiling lottery ticket that you could potentially get because of that 5-star pedigree. And you look at this guy. He is rocked up. He is built. He has kind of like a similar build to like a Chris Jones. And I mean that. He has all the traits that you want. And this is where the Bears might absolutely love him. But yet again, he was the best person on the board that I knew I could get an A+ on. So let me know. What's your thoughts on Mason Smith? I know last time we went live, a lot of you were saying some people love Mason Smith. They absolutely adore Mason Smith. I have him as my defensive tackle 10. He's consensus defensive tackle 8, number 77 consensus on the consensus board. That's why for this, he is a A+ draft pick. So right now, how are we feeling? We got our edge, we got our D tackle, we got a center, we got a quarterback. Now, wide receiver. And like I said, wide receiver was really not on the board a lot when I was out there. Actually, I don't even think Xavier Legette was on there when I was picking at number 57. Like the wide receivers were actually kind of sliding. That's why you're not seeing a lot of those show up. So we need to get a wide receiver at pick 122. And there's no better one. One of my favorites out there, Malik Washington. Now, we talked about him that in the PFF simulator, this is an A+ there. They must have gotten around to watching him because now he's in the top 100 for PFF. He's also in the top 100 for a lot of the other positions. And actually, I need to flip these around a little bit. So Malik Washington, Virginia wide receiver, 5'8", 194, rocked up. I've talked about this guy all the time. 110 receptions, over 1,400 receiving yards, 9 touchdowns, and just truly a route technician. Just very good, phenomenal route technician that you know that is going to get open. He's going to be there to get the ball. Only thing that I don't love about this is that he's not an outside receiver. He's a consensus 110 wide receiver out there. He's my wide receiver 13. I love his tape. I think he's going to be good. Kind of just only a slot weapon, which means that Keenan Allen would probably have to play more so on the outside. But yet again, there's still wide receivers like a DJ Chark and other outside wide receivers that you could use and add if you really wanted to fill out the wide receiver room. But Malik Washington, to me, just a true, fundamentally sound wide receiver that I think can instantly come in and be a starter. Yet again, an A+ grade for this selection. So now we're at pick 150. We still have 150, 170, and 190, perfectly 20 spots away from each other. And this is when you're just kind of finding some random needs and just some random good players, because we know that Ryan Poles likes to just kind of fill out the roster and fill out certain positions. And that's why I pick 150. Tykee Smith, safety out of Georgia, is going to the Chicago Bears. And this is someone who we really haven't talked too much about. 5'10", 205, projected to go in day 3. He's my safety 9. He's the consensus 135th safety 8. Just a good, fundamentally sound safety. 70 tackles last year, 4 interceptions, 2 PBUs, and 2 sacks. 13% missed tackle, which seems high, but it's not incredibly high for safeties. But also transferred from West Virginia over to Georgia. So also just high energy, try hard guy that is always trying to attack downhill, but also he's more of this box safety type of a role. So to me, part of me doesn't necessarily love him in the Bears system just because they're asked to play a lot of that too high sets. I still think he can play a too high look, but I don't think he's your true free safety, single high. I think that what you would get out of him is that he's more of your backup to a Jaquan Brisker in the box. But Tykee Smith, good sound pick that you get at pick 150. And yet again, they're giving this an A+ for it. I'm not necessarily in love with it. It's like, okay, this is just a good backup, solid backup at the safety position, and maybe challenges Elijah Hicks since we already have Owens that we just signed. So let's carry on at pick 170, where this is where we dive into the tight end pool and we acquire Jared Wiley, tight end out of TCU. Now this guy, he's got the Ryan Poles stamp of approval. I need to just cover all the tight ends that are out there, but Ryan Poles would like this guy. This guy is 6'6", 259, obviously performed well at the combine. That's why he's got the Ryan Poles stamp. So above 8.0 RAS score. And this guy's calling card, 6'6". It's his catch radius. You throw the ball up, he's going to come down with it. What does a rookie quarterback want? A big jump ball guy. Reminds me of Kevin Boss. He had a 68 grade from PFF, which was the 75th best. He's my tight end 9. He's the overall tight end 6. At first, I thought that I was high on him, but now people are actually projecting this guy to go in the 2nd, which I think is a little bit rich. He's very tall, very good at the contested catch, he's just a very sound receiver, a sound tight end. 2.1% drops, played 202 snaps in line, 121 in slot. Like, he is an inline tight end. And that's why I actually really like this selection. 47 receptions, 520 yards, 8 touchdowns. Like I said, just him as a backup that you can just lob it up to. Reminds me a lot of what the Bears did with like a Jimmy Graham, except this guy can block a little bit better. And ultimately, He does the whole Jimmy Graham basketball player where he just shields everything away from him so he can make that catch. Now, some of the downsides, why I guess I'm technically lower than him than consensus. He's just you throw me the ball, I'll catch it, and then I'm going down. That's really it. There's not a lot of wiggle to his game. He's very upright with a lot of how he plays, but it's because he's so tall. So ultimately, I think he's just going to be a good foundational player that, hey, why not get a specific red zone option for Caleb Williams? So now, the last pick. Where are we going to go with this pick? But yet again, like I said, we really can't go the same route. I would love for this to be a running back. Running backs really were not on the board any time that I went up on this. So if you're ever curious why we didn't go wide receiver early, there was really none available. Why did we not go running back early? Well, there really wasn't any available, and we went with some other players. Our last pick 190, we're going with Matt. I'll see if I can pronounce this correct now because I actually heard it correctly now. Matt Goncalves. It's a Hispanic last name. It's not Goncalves or Goncalves. Goncalves. So Matt Goncalves out of Pittsburgh, offensive tackle, 6'6", 330, redshirt senior, and just this guy is he's the stereotype of the foundational tackle build. He's the perfect opportunity to be a swing tackle. We know that Larry Borum's, the Bears, it doesn't seem like they like him. They want to have a true swing tackle. He could come in and be that swing tackle for the Bears. He's my tackle number 14. On the consensus board, he is tackle 16. And I think, too, he might move down a little couple notches for me, but just a sound player. Last year, though, was banged up, only played 3 games, and had a 97.3 pass block efficiency, which is pretty darn good. Even though that he didn't incredibly well last year in his 3 games, in 2022 he got a 71.9 PFF grade, which was good for 104th. Ultimately, to me, gives you good swing tackle vibes. Is someone that you can bring out there and just see how good of a player he is. I also love that he handles. If anyone tries to hit him with power, he really holds his ground well. And like I said, too, has very good size for you and also has some good lateral quickness to his game where he's got the foundational pieces for a player. He's not like this crazy good athlete. It's just foundational, sturdy tackle that you can get very late that could potentially replace a Larry Borum. So what do we have here? Here's what it looks like now. Caleb Williams, Jared Verse, Zack Frasier, Mason Smith, Malik Washington, Tykee Smith, Jared Wiley, and Matt Goncalves. I like it. I like this one. I'm not like head over heels in love with it. I love the ideas of the trading back and getting some of these assets. Like I said, Mason Smith fits the Bears' profile at the defensive tackle position. But I like it. Let me know down below, what do you think? You're not going to hurt my feelings because I was just going for the A pluses as much as possible. So that's what an A plus draft looks like. What do you think? Are these mock draft simulators off? But that's what truly an A plus draft looks like. So if you're watching, if you haven't already, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to leave a comment. It helps out the channel tremendously. And if you haven't already, download the podcast everywhere that you get your podcasts. Search for Unbearable Sports and you'll find us out there. We are getting even closer, 5 days until the NFL draft. Make sure to like, subscribe, and Unbearable Sports Podcast. We are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair and you know that she's a